Welcome once again to the Bike Show, and this week, as always, we've got loads to get through, including an interesting interview with an up-and-coming star from World Superbikes. We've also got news about some interesting brands that have just arrived in South Africa.
But first, we've had a viewer's question, another viewer's question. We've had at least 3 letters in the last few months. This guy wants to know, the 899 Panigale Ducati, if he buys one of those, do people just think he hasn't got enough money to afford the 1199? Or actually, is the 899 in real terms just as fast as 1199? We sent Matt and Clint to find out.
Some people are under the mistaken impression that bigger is always better. That just isn't true, and the bike I'm sat on, Ducati's 899 Panigale, is proof of that.
What are you talking about? The 1199 Panigale is the one to have. Bigger is always better. Give me one example where small is better.
Overdraft. It's better to have a small overdraft. And pimples on your wife's bottom. They're better when they're smaller.
Boobs, better when they're bigger.
Unless they're man boobs, like mine, and then they're much better when they're smaller. All right, then, I see your point of view. It looks like there's no way to solve this argument. Ducati reckon that this, the 899 Panigale, is not only cheaper, but it's a better road bike. The 1199 is a replica superbike. Do you really need that much? Don't say anything, Clinton. Bigger's always better. We get the message. Let's have a ride, and I'm going to try and convince Clinton that a little bit of petiteness occasionally is the way to go. Not that the 899 is genuinely petite next to the 1199, because it actually weighs a couple of kilos more. You can blame cost-cutting for that. Less exotic materials means more weight, but not enough to notice. The weird thing is, the 899 actually feels a bit more chuckable than its bigger horsepower brother. And riding on a cold morning at the twisty Redstar Raceway, I'm glad to be on the model, which is by far the easiest to ride. The excellent adjustable traction control system is a blessing too in these conditions, and so is the relative lack of power. No, really it is. I like a good dollop of torque and horsepower as much as the next man, believe me, but 148 claimed horsepower and 99 Newton-meters of torque are not to be sniffed at. And the suspension is more forgiving on the smaller bike too. It's a more plush road bias setup that is still plenty good enough for messing around at the track. I reckon I can get at more of the 899's performance than with the slightly intimidating 1199. It feels like I'm in charge, and I'm not sure that's always the case with bikes as powerful as the 1199.
But that's part of the fun of superbikes. And fun is something that's better the bigger it is. And horsepower equals fun. We all know that. And with nearly 50 horsepower more, that means more acceleration, more top speed, which means more fun. I know I'm a professional, or supposed to be, but even when I didn't make a living from riding bikes, I've never owned one that I didn't want to make faster. Ducati's electronics mean the fear factor can be turned down, and so the safety levels are ultimately the same, however much horsepower you've got. I can sort of see what Matt's saying about the usability, and the 899 is good, really good, and it's still properly fast, but you just can't beat the real thing. Hang on to the throttle on a big sports bike just once and you'll be spoiled forever. Horsepower is addictive. Don't get me wrong, you need to be experienced to handle one of these things safely. But if you've got the skill level for the 899, I think you'll also be ready for the 1199.
The nice thing, though, whichever you buy, is that from a distance they look almost identical. Only the real Ducati fans will be able to spot the different swing arms. Both have a side-mounted shock and an underslung exhaust. Both have fantastic brakes from Brembo that incorporate a very clever ABS system that can also be turned off. And both have a deceptively high-revving V-twin. The riding position feels just that bit less radical on the 899, and so it wins the comfort battle by a small margin, an important consideration if you're getting a sport bike primarily for the road.
The 1199's major advantages are hidden by the beautiful fairing. You can't see the extra capacity that generates over 190 claimed horsepower, but you can see some of the more exotic metals used for the engine covers and the like. Turn the 1199 on and you'll notice another advantage. The electronic dash is more comprehensive, as is the color. Small stuff, but important when you're spending big money on a bike like this.
Hooking up for a few laps together proves again just how capable the 899 is, although the bigger bike is still quicker over the course of a lap, thanks to Redstar's 2 decent straights. But make no mistake, the 1199 rider needs to know what he's doing, or his slightly braver buddy on the 899 might just drop him. That's how close they are through the corners. The smaller bike definitely seems a bit more willing to dive into the apex, but once there, it's the 1199 that dominates the corner exit. Even I have to admit, though, that the way it fires off down the straight is seriously impressive, and no matter how hard you pin the little one, you're not going to stop it coming past. Unless, of course, he's generous enough to let you past. Nice one. Thanks, Clinton. Both bikes are extremely accurate. Riding this close means you need to be sure where you're putting the bike. And with the Panigales, you can be sure you're going to hit the same bit of tar time after time. Unless, of course, the 1199 sniffs another straight, in which case it will be on the bit of track that you want to take at the next turn. I'm not sure Clinton has seen the light, but I have. The 899 is not just a cheaper 1199. It's a worthy sport bike in its own right. Well, I think that's all the proof you need. I've made my case, and Ducati have made my case for me. Why else would they make a smaller bike? Why else would they tell us that it's better for the road? I'll tell you why, because in the world of motorcycling, bigger isn't always best.
Matt, you're so wrong, and this is why.